Good afternoon. Thursday, October 7th, The Black Man Who Reads Aloud. Continuing my personal journey through the Alabama slave narratives, the Federal Writers Project. Today we are going to be reading the three chapters of a book written by Wilson Northcross, a preacher in Alabama. Today, this interview is uh, is is written down by Levi D. Shelby Jr., a colored person from Tuscumia, Alabama. The autobiography of Reverend Wilson E. Northcross, 1887, in three chapters. The first chapter, How Reared. I was born in a slave in 1840 in Colbert County, Alabama. Education was denied me, hence I grew up in ignorance. My mother and father were carried from me when I was only 9 years old, but soon as chance presented itself, I ran away and went to them. My white people brought me back, and as they were not cruel to their slaves, they did not buck me. I stayed with them until I was 15 summers old. During that time, my mistress made all the children, both girls and boys, come to her every Sunday, and she taught Sunday school. The book used was the old-fashioned catechisms. Jesus, keep me near the cross. There's a precious fountain free to all. A healing stream flows from Calvary's mountain. It was against the law for them to learn to read and write, so she taught them the Lord's Prayer and a few other things in the book. She said that she wanted them to know how to pray, how to tell the truth, and not to steal, and to always try to do right in the sight of everybody and in the sight of God. With these influences, I confess a hope in Christ at the age of 13 years. I am a soldier of the cross, a follower of the Lamb, and shall I fear to own his cause or blush to speak his name? When she did not teach herself, she had an adopted girl do the same. Finally, the adopted girl married and moved to a farm where I was born, the farm from which I ran away. About this time, I was 20 years old. I felt that there was something for me to do. I began to lead prayer meetings. Still, I felt that there was more for me to do. In chapter 2, Reverend Northcross writes about entering the ministry. I felt that I was called to preach, though unlearned and ignorant. I trembled at the thought of preaching the gospel, but something seemed to push me forward in that direction, so I asked the people to let me preach. This request was granted. The people at that time had no place or house of worship. I began to fast and pray night and day, being unlearned and ignorant. Acts 4:13, my heart silently murmured, bread of heaven, feed me till I want no more. This was the only school I attended both day and night. At this time, I did not know A from B, but I met a man who could read a little. This man liked me and promised to teach me how to read, provided I would keep it a secret. This I promised gladly to do. I am weak, thou art mighty. Hold me with thy powerful hand. I secured a blue-black speller and went out on the mountain every Sunday to meet this gentleman to be taught. I would stay on the mountain all day Sunday without food. I continued this way for a year and succeeded well. I hired my own time, and with my blue-black speller, I went to the mountain to have this man teach me. The mountain was a great school which I attended. I went from there to the blacksmith shop to work. From that place, I was captured by the Yankees and carried to war. As I was crippled, I was allowed to remain in the commissary department for about 6 months. While we were at camp at Athens, Alabama, General Forrest came upon us and defeated, captured, and killed until they were literally out of existence. I had been kind to some little white children, by which I had their love and, of course, the love of their parents. and stayed with them 3 days during the battle. I came to the river and turned aside to a farm from which all the people had gone to save themselves from the war. I got a man to help reach an island where I worked 3 days without anything to eat except grapes and muscadines. I preferred to die on the island than to be killed by the soldiers. Therefore, in time of danger, I rushed to this house, and the good people hid me and changed my clothes. Hence, when I was found, I was taken for one of the gentleman's slaves. When I was permitted by the man to try to return to LaGrange and had gone some distance, I was caught by deserters from the Southern Army who voted to shoot me. They bound me and kept me overnight, intending to do away with me the next day. It was a lonely desert on the Tennessee River. I could not sleep, so all night I prayed to God, and the wives of the men prayed to God for the poor nigger, and also prayed to their cruel husbands. Their prayers prevailed, and I was robbed and let go. I had vowed not to reveal their whereabouts. I left loving God and believing in His providence as I had never believed before. Earth has no sorrow that heaven cannot heal. I went home, got another spelling book, although it was not allowed. Some of my own people told my master that I had a book trying to read. He sent for me to come to the house. I obeyed, though I dreaded to meet him, not knowing what the consequences would be. But his heart had been touched by divine power, and he simply told me that he heard that I had a book, and that if I was caught with it, I would be hung. So I thanked him, and I departed. Notwithstanding my master's counsel, I thirsted for knowledge, and I got some old boys and carried them to my house to make a light by which I could see how to read. I would shut the doors, put one end of the board into the fire, and proceed to study. But whenever I heard the dogs barking, I would throw my book under the bed and peep and listen to see what was up. If no one was near, I would crawl under the bed, get my book, come out, lie flat on my stomach, and proceed to study until the dogs would again disturb me. I did this for many nights. I continued in this way to try to learn to spell and read as best I could. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. I, like the Ethiopian, wanted a guide. I moved to Mrs. McReynolds' place. God bless her. She gave me a lesson every night for a period of 4 years. Then I went to my old master's brother, whose wife helped me every night as long as I would go to her for help. A white Reverend Shackelford greatly aided me for a period of 3 years. Boys and girls, I grasped these golden opportunities which are now extended you from the schoolroom. Unlearned and ignorant as I was, I came along that way until the present time. My readers had better chances than I had, so I hope that they will make good use of their time and make my heart feel glad to see them setting their marks high and preparing themselves for the great beyond where all must go. Thither all nations will be called before the mighty judgment seat of the ruler of the universe to give account for the deeds done in this world. My prayer for the reader is that they make strong, useful, wise, and Christian men and women, and at the end of time meet their God in peace. Chapter 3, my work. I will endeavor in this chapter to tell something about my works and whereabouts. I was ordained to the gospel ministry by a white Reverend Mr. Slater and Mr. Henry Bynum, Reverend Stephen Coleman, and Reverend and Henry Bynum, aided by Dr. Joseph Shackelford, laid down the foundation stones for the colored churches in Morgan, Franklin, Colbert, Lauderdale, and Lawrence County, Alabama. I am now the pastor of the First Baptist Church of Tecumseh, Alabama, which is the best Negro edifice in North Alabama. The church was organized 35 years ago by me with 75 members, but it now has a membership of 900. I've pastored it for these many years. The church is an excellent brick edifice. A few other brethren and myself organized the Muscle Shoals Baptist Association, one of the oldest and largest associations in Alabama. I've been moderator for 4 years and as treasurer for 6 years. I have, I have, and I have built the church at Russellville, Alabama, and pastored it for 4 years. Then ordained Brother P. Jones and recommended him as pastor. I built the Barton Church and pastored it for a period of 15 years. And for 4 years, and pastored it for a period of 15 years, after which I recommended Reverend James Hampton there as pastor. I pastored the Cherokee Church 5 years, ordained Brother Dennis Jackson and recommended him there as a pastor. I Baptist Liberty Baptist Church for 3 years, ordained Brother Alex Brown and recommended him there as a pastor. I served Uka, Mississippi for 5 years, then recommended a brother from the West who belonged to the Mount Olive Association to it. I built up the Sheffield Church, pastored it for 3 years, and then recommended Brother G.B. Johnson there as shepherd. I also built up Mount Moriah Church at Prides, Alabama. I frequently uttered these words: where Jesus leads me, I will follow. In his footsteps, I'll pursue. I organized the St. Paul Church in Colbert County and pastored it for 2 years. Reverend E.C. White, who is now an assistant moderator of the Muscle Shoals Association, was ordained by me. I've ordained more than 20 preachers to the gospel ministry, baptized 6,000 persons, united in marriage 5,000 couples, and buried about 7,000 persons. I've been faithful to every charge. Hark the voice of Jesus calling. Who will in work today? Fields are white and harvest waiting. Who will bear the sheaves away? I have never left the old landmark. Not one of the churches which I have pastored has brought a charge against me. The deepest secrets of our hearts shall shortly be made known. I have been married 3 times and have known no woman but my wife, though unlearned and ignorant. I've never had but one fuss with my wife. I told her at one time to hush, and she failed to do so, so I slapped her, after which I went to the Lord in prayer and asked to be forgiven. I regret very much indeed to inform the world in print that I have been drunk from intoxicating liquor twice, which was before I professed religion. Notwithstanding, I have ever held up temperance and aimed to keep it high until Shiloh comes to gather up his jewels. The following recommendation will show what the best people of Tecumseh think of me. Tecumseh, Alabama, March 13th, 1897. To whom it may concern, we take pleasure in stating that we have known the bearer of this letter, Reverend Wilson Northcross, for a number of years, and that he is a conscientious, intelligent colored man of good character. He has been a pastor of the Missionary Baptist Church of this place since the war, having been instrumental in building the church, and have always made a good citizen. We believe him in every way worthy of respect and confidence of his people. The following resolution was adopted by the church which I pastored 30 years. Resolved that Reverend Wilson E. Northcross, our pastor, is a good, moral Christian man. He's been our pastor for 30 years, and we can truthfully say that he teaches in all things by example as well as by precept. Tecumseh Missionary Baptist Church. The history of this church has undergone many changes, but they all worked for its betterment. At the close of the Civil War, the few members went from Brush Arbor to Brush Arbor for 3 years. Then they held services in gin houses and under shelters for 2 years and 6 months. Then as the church was growing rapidly, they thought best to draw out, buy a lot, and build to themselves. So they brought a lot for what they paid $50 and erected a $500 building thereupon which to worship the Lord. So the church continued to grow until it now has a membership of 900, a splendid black edifice worth about $6,000 and a thriving congregation. The church has never had but one pastor, and I have been as faithful as a clock. Through me, Reverend W. Northcross, the church was built, and I have ever since held high the Baptist doctrine throughout North Alabama. The Black Man Who Reads Aloud, Federal Writers Project, my personal journey through the Alabama slave narrative.